Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's panel discussion. It's a lessons from experience with RIAs. I have two executives I'm thrilled that are joining me today. Kurt Mashinsky, he's a CPA, and he's also CEO of Sirianni Partners, and he's on the Capital Group Advisory Board. And then we have Eric Gray, who's director of RIA distribution for Capital Group, and he's also director of the Capital Group RIA Advisory Board. Welcome, gentlemen. I'm not coming to you from Rahway State Penitentiary. This is not Johnny Cash in Folsom Prison or anything. This is actually my background because I'm renovating a house. But I'm thrilled to have you guys here today, and we can talk a little bit about RIAs with our audience. I mean, the best thing about an RIA is that you're independent and that you're on your own, and you don't have anybody to answer to. But the worst thing is that you're on your own and you don't have anybody to bounce anything off of. And this program you have, this RIA Insider, I would have killed for, when I started, just to be able to sort of have some back and forth, get some practice management help, get some good advice. And that's one of the things you really miss when you're independent. I mean, if you're in a wirehouse, you can walk down the hall. Technically, your branch manager ought to be helping you too sometimes, but at least you can get some input back and forth. So I think it's great to have the two of you here. Eric, with your sort of, macro 60,000 foot input, because you're talking to dozens of RIAs every week. That's great. And then, of course, from a perspective of success. And, what you're doing out there, Kurt, is fantastic to grow to $30 billion in that time. So I want to go through that. I want to make this interesting for the folks out there and make sure that we hear about some of your success and how you did it. We're also in the middle of an unprecedented crisis, so we'll address, some of the how you guys are facing that, and then maybe talk a little bit about the future. So let's start with you, Kurt. Let's go to the Wayback Machine here. 12 years ago, you got zero in assets. You're starting this thing up. You got great hair. If I had your hair, I'd be president of the United States. So let's start there. But you're going back 12 years, zero in assets. If you were to sort of, look back and say, what are the pieces that you think made you successful from the start? Was it the people? Was it the process? Was it the platform, the partnerships? What do you think it was if you were talking to yourself, looking at 12 years ago and talking to somebody who wants to start an RIA today?
Yeah, well, Tony, thank you. I appreciate all the kind remarks. First, I would say it starts with timing. And I wish I could tell you it was out of brilliance of planning the timing of it, but it was just very fortuitous. We launched our firm officially in 2009 at the absolute bottom of the last major recession. And therefore, we had good conditions and nothing but a very strong tailwind ever since we launched. But it was also at a time that might have been a bit of an inflection point for our industry. First, for the first time in my career, saw the major global investment banks, a place where I spent 11 years, take a fairly hard reputational knock that they were perceived to be bad actors in the last major financial and economic recession. And so for the first time, you had a good portion of the wealth management industry somewhat distrusted by the marketplace, by private clients. And so that gave a very nice tailwind coming off of a recession, that you had this move to independence. And for the first time in my career, I also saw clients and prospective clients mention the word fiduciary. At the start of my career, no one even knew how to spell fiduciary, let alone mention, are you a fiduciary? And it became increasingly important. And you combine that with the ever-growing trend that holistic wealth management was much more powerful simply than just investment management, gave all the right ingredients to start the firm. So I'd say the timing of all that very much put us in a good position to grow very strongly organically. Then it was the business model. Very much many of us at the firm had grown up in very large private partnerships. And culturally, those private partnerships where it's employee owned and you're building something together, that the organization has many faces. It's not a faceless organization. And to create that private partnership based on meritocracy of how you share in the success of the firm, both cash flow and the equity, creates the right cultural environment and the right ethos. And so the combination of that business model of being a full service wealth management firm in the mold of a private partnership gave us good ingredients. We've often focused on three primary things. Do our colleagues take pride in what they do and where they do it within the firm? Pride often comes with those around you. When you see your colleagues who are very well educated and credentialed and experienced and are exceptional at what they do, you have more pride in what you do and where you do it. Secondly to that, it's having control of your own professional fulfillment and economic destiny. Within our firm, there's no upside limit. If you continue to contribute to the success of the firm as defined by developing more clients and those clients generating more revenue and profit for the firm, your economic success continues to climb correspondingly. And lastly, which is probably the hardest to manage, an environment where people generally like the people they work with and trust the people they work for. And so if we get those three things right, it's a very good business and a business model that will put you in a good position. And then lastly, which was very much evolutionary for me personally, and maybe even some of my colleagues, leveraging everything the market has to give to you, leveraging world-class partners such as the Capital Group to be able to extract all of its intelligence and research for the benefit of serving our clients. While I grew up in a global investment bank, we oftentimes were a bit myopic. It's what we were capable of doing. We would never say to a prospective client, before you make your decision, let me inform you what my competitors are able to do. As always, this is what we could do and why it should be good for you. So to have the freedom to use any and everything available in the marketplace for your client's benefit and harness all this world-class intelligence and to be able to synthesize it to serve clients created nothing but strong momentum coming out of the gate.
Yeah, interesting, because I call that time, that's when I started Washington Wealth too. It was the perfect storm. I mean, it was just, there was so much going on. And then, but it's interesting how now 10 years later, it's that ethos that started then is really changing our industry, I think for the better. And as people are starting, one of the things you mentioned, I think is really important is ownership, partnership and ownership, because that's a choice that RIAs have. If I'm going to start my RIA, am I going to share the profitability? Am I going to bring people in as partners? And it sounds to me like that choice was the right one for you.
I appreciate that. Yes, approximately 1/3 of all of our colleagues have ownership in the firm.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, Eric, when you look at that, you're hearing that sort of origin story. How often do you see this every week? Are people bringing you the same ideas? Again, that maybe the thought of how do I structure this thing? How should we put it together in the first place to make it successful? What partners should we leverage? You heard that was really important. So what are you seeing every week when you hear Kurt talk like that?
Yeah, it's interesting, in our business, and we've all heard it, right? If you've seen one RIA, you've seen one RIA. And I think to a degree that's true. We all like to think that we're unique entities, but I think at the same time, there are definitely some throughputs, some tent poles of how you build a large, successful business through time. And I think you're hearing them come through from Kurt. I like that he started with this idea of an enterprise mindset. So having a vision for the business, thinking about that business as a business, approaching it with the idea, not just in the leadership team, but throughout the organization, that you're building a standalone, self-sustaining entity that extends beyond the advisor-client relationship, that all associates are engaged. And I thought it was interesting, too, that he also made the pivot to culture. And I think culture is absolutely critical, that everyone shares that vision. He talked about engaging folks in ownership, sharing that vision, not just from a future state perspective, but actually in the success of the business. I would add a culture of associate empowerment. So do they know that you're about growth, you're about innovation, that they should be disrupting themselves, that you are going to engage them above their pay grade, you are going to pull them broadly across the business? It's so compelling for people to be engaged in a business like that and to feel that they can raise their voice and make an impact behind their own narrow role. And when you do that, I feel like as a leader through time, that the innovation starts to come from below and they begin to push you. And, just a couple of really simple ways I'm seeing some firms started to make that shift. One is starting to deliberately make a decision to move to professional management and separate those activities from day-to-day client responsibilities. Make it important, set a vision, empower someone or someones to manage and guide that. And the last is to think about what you deliver to clients. This has been an unprecedented time for us. We already knew that technology is going to change how we were doing business. That's just accelerated in the last bunch of months. We know that what can be mechanized will be commoditized. So if that list of what technology is going to commoditize just continues to grow, what is of highest value? What is your focus for your ideal client? What they're going to see as of most value, and how you're going to deliver it?
Very interesting. One of the things you hit on was this idea of a notion of acceleration, right? Typically, Kurt, we get with a new technology, we don't go backwards. from it. You know what I mean? So we had this, we're in this time now where all this work that you put in 12 years, you're $30 billion, you're a mature company, but now you're facing something that's unprecedented. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, had you told your board of directors, you know what, I'm going to send everybody home for like 6 months, let's test our technology, let's see how that works. And then not only that, but you have this acceleration in technology, but also going back to what Eric was saying, in how maybe we manage our business. You know, there have been a lot of changes. So walk me through a little bit, you know, as you're at the helm of the ship, pandemic hits, you know, what do you do? What are you telling your advisors and your clients?
Sure. Well, I feel incredibly blessed when looking back in hindsight. Had you asked me in December of last year, hey, if we were to hit a global pandemic, what would happen? I'd first ask, what's a global pandemic? Because never heard or saw one in my life. But now, having seen that, would not have expected that the transition over would have been as easy as it was. And that's, I think, the good fortunes, and I don't believe as a firm we're alone, of having incredible, great mobile technologies. Things as basic as Microsoft Teams and Zoom and WebEx, of course, became the prevailing technology of choice. But more importantly, what it did, it was a terrific, not that people getting sick or dying should be a terrific reminder of anything, but the environment that we were in was a terrific reminder of how to raise the bar for engagement within the firm and engagement with our clients. And it forced us, you know, probably for the first time in our 12-year existence, to do things we never even envisioned doing. I would say as a firm, we probably advanced cultural integration more in the last 7 months than we did the prior 3 years. We had this incredible grassroots effort within our firm of colleagues wanting to engage with each other, colleagues in New York who never even saw the faces of colleagues in Southern California now are on many different internal Zoom calls and other video conferencing. So it accelerated technology use that was there, but really forced you to have to use it. And what it did, it just took off that engagement. And then play that forward with clients who never would even whisper the words video conferencing anything, now are sitting on their couches with a glass of wine as we're advising them. And we're popping up on shared screen, you know, various materials, and you get to see the sense of ease and almost entertainment they have of how neat is this? We used to possibly drive down, find parking, come up to the office, talk about it, and now look how comfortable we are engaging. So without question, having the right message at the right time and the right medium is very powerful. But this has opened the door to now new mediums of how to interact. You know, we've been blessed this year. We've developed over 600 new private clients already year to date organically. Over 50% of them we've never yet met. 2 Zoom calls and a DocuSign email later, and we're onboarding a private client. Again, never would have thought that would be even possible as recently as last December, but now, you know, you're forced to operate in this way. And so I believe some of these things will be here to stay. I don't think they'll completely replace human interaction and getting together, but I definitely think it's going to augment how we've operated and worked with clients. And we as a firm don't want to forget this time of just how well engagement has been within the firm and with our clients.
So you hit on a whole bunch of stuff there. One of the things that, you know, I actually wrote this article that was what a 3-year-old is going to teach us about our business. And the whole point was, you know, you have these, the older generations here that are a little bit ambivalent about technology. You know, they're not taking Instagram photos of their food, right, and sending it to everybody, but they use it, you know, when it works for them. All of a sudden, if they want to see their grandkids, they better learn how to do Zoom. So they do. And they're not, now the expectation is on you. You better Zoom them all the time. And I love what you said about the glass of wine, because that's so true, because now we're in a spot where the third wall is broken. It's like, you know, when you see a movie and Eddie Murphy talks to the camera, like this, that's where we're at now in our business. You know, we broke down the third wall. They see you in your pajamas and you see them in t-shirts and that's cool. And that wasn't cool a couple of years ago. You know, that has implications for real estate. I'm sure when you opened your offices, you wanted them to be impressive and all that. And meanwhile, everybody's in their slippy jammies talking to so, you know, what's the point? Eric, are you seeing that sort of across the board, the same changes that Kurt was talking about?
I think Kurt captured it really well. And I guess the thing that we try to remind ourselves is it's interesting now, 6 months in, we feel like old vets, right? We know an awful lot now. It's kind of the historian's fallacy. We know an awful lot now that we didn't know at the time at all. And you think about those early days, it was immediately just, can we double down on our associates? Can we double down on our clients? Can we think about what they need and what engagement's going to need to look like? And can we shorten the time frame that we're thinking about innovation? Because, if we're going to avoid the Stockdale paradox, right? This is going to be over by Easter. It's going to be over by Memorial Day. It's going to be over by, and now we're looking at a period where it's likely we'll be in this hybrid format at least through the end of next year. Can we think about accelerating that innovation? Can we create the forums where the team's coming together, empower them to say, look, we should be thinking about this in 30-day blocks. What we know today is going to be completely different than what we know in 30 days. The needs of our clients and our ability to deliver is going to be different in 30 days. We need everyone to be contributing. And it's really humbling. It was humbling to see how they grabbed that. And you could see a lot of things, and I think it's coming through from Kurt, from those who've been around for a long time, had a fixed view of the world. Can people work from home? Turns out they can, really productively. Can you maintain culture? Turns out they can, really productively. But you've got to help them with both. And at the same time that we saw real innovation from those that are lesser tenured in the business in terms of how they use the technology, how they pushed us to adapt it quickly and put it into play. So, as Kurt said, I think, we don't know. We know what pre-COVID looks like. We know what COVID looks like. We're not quite sure what that balance looks like coming out the other end. But I think the blessing is we got another 13 months or so as we go through this slow opening period for us to really pay attention and learn and take the best of what we got over the last 6 months and turn it into a change model going forward. And the best firms, those that do that, go from just learning to institutionalizing how they deliver, I think come out of this in great shape.
I actually think this is, when I was in the beginning talking about your program here, this RIA Insider, this is a time that could be really valuable just to get RIAs together and talk and get information and listen to, you, Kurt, because a lot of times if you have a smaller RIA, you're dealing with clients, maybe you're hiring, you have a lot on your plate, your chef bottle, you don't have the time that you might have to say, let me take a step back and do some strategic thinking here, and this is what's going to happen. So that's why I think this is an important conversation for advisors, to hear. One thing that you hit on, Kurt, that I want to go back to, and I think it's a challenge for every firm today, is you mentioned engagement. It sounds like it's going well. But how do you inculcate culture in a time of Zoom? I have two daughters that are in their 20s. I worry about them. They haven't been back to their office in a year and a half. They don't really know anybody. They don't really have a mentor. They don't have somebody to help them. It's so hard. And we want to bring new people in the business, all the stuff we need to do. And you talked about the engagement. Certainly in some ways it's better, closer, more. But how do you keep that culture going in a firm during a time like this?
Yeah, well, thanks, Tony. First, I am hopeful that it will be relatively short-lived in the grand scheme of things, but yet still a good exercise to go through. Our efforts on engagement have been increased interaction, increased activities, bringing people together to work on solving various aspects of our firm. So the engagement of being able to work on more things outside of providing advice to clients and servicing clients has been that tool. I don't believe that is an absolute replacement for culture engagement. I think about how I grew up in the business, starting my career at one of the largest accounting firms in the world, and you're on a floor with 200 professionals all within 2 years of you. It's osmosis. You learn a lot, you see a lot by being there and being around. To Eric's point about being productive in this environment, people are being productive. And I find it almost humorous that prior to this environment within our firm, and I suspect many firms, you have an ever-growing young professional staff clamoring for more mobility and time, and now clamoring, when can we get back into the office? So there's an element of you always wish for what you don't always have. But we're definitely saying that there is a strong interest to want to resume to coming back physically together. But that said, I suspect this experience that we've had with the global pandemic is going to lead to an increased amount of mobility, as now people have a taste of what that really is, and they like elements of it. So we will definitely have our work cut out for us of how do you maintain, build, and grow a strong culture, knowing you're likely going to increasingly become a mobile workforce, not as potentially as mobile as we are right now here in November of 2020, but definitely much more mobile than we were coming into this year.
Eric, you're hearing the same things from the advisors that you talk to, maybe concern about how do I keep this going?
Yeah, and I don't, I wouldn't. Yeah, I I would just support at everyone's varying scale and maturity of the business, everything that Kurt has said. I think the things we need to keep our eye on are, we know over this period we've been able to sustain culture, but we've had to be deliberate about it. And I think that's going to change. And if it extends in a period of time, we're going to have to be very deliberate about how we can continue to evolve how we sustain culture. There are also some things that I think will become challenging through time. And just one to think about is this idea of idea sharing within your business, the happy accidents of running into other associates, talking about their products, the engagements that happen outside the formal engagement. How do we replace that in the office? And then I think it's the same for RIAs in terms of growing business. They're going to need to maintain that culture and connection to existing clients, but those happy accidents of referrals or social and business engagements that have created prospects, created opportunity. The longer this goes, the more we'll be challenged in those aspects. And I think those are things that as we come into the end of the year, thinking about this extending into next year, we're thinking a lot about.
So we talked a little bit about how these, how things might change. When you look forward, we talked about technology has a tendency to accelerate, right? So which pieces from the pandemic and the new normal, we're dealing with clients or markets or whatever, do you think we're going to take forward with us that are the definite things that we're going to keep? The Zoom, and what are the things we might leave behind? I also think a lot about real estate and what's going to be the value of it. It's a big part of your P&L, I imagine, Kurt, too. So what lessons are you going to take, from this, and what are you going to apply going forward?
Yeah, so Tom, start on the real estate front, sitting on well over 100,000 square feet of space across the country. As our leases come up, it will force us to think about, the footprints we have. We happen to be in among the most expensive markets in the country, in New York and Chicago and San Francisco and Los Angeles and other places where rents are pretty high. Maybe they now soften a bit, but it is now causing us to talk about, do we create a lighter real estate footprint? Do we have a concept of hoteling where colleagues could grab, in essence, their locker of stuff and bring it to the available spot, still, of course, having appropriate space, for client meetings for those clients who wish to come in or prospective clients. So that is likely to be tested in our next couple of leases that come up. We're likely to test that concept and to see if we have great engagement with colleagues thinking that's the way to go. As terms of what things are going to stick around, I'm expecting the first meetings that often almost always took place in person, that more of those will likely be done through a video conference call or a video nature of some sort like this, Zoom, where people say, hey, let's see if there's something here to get together. And so I think that is here to stay. I also think this technology will become pervasive throughout our internal office equipment, that literally every workstation, every office, every phone is going to be now wired with cameras, where it wasn't that way as recently as 8-9 months ago. Even though we had Zoom in our firm for nearly 2 years, it just, people weren't using that. Now everyone has the HD camera, posted at home, posted in the office and everywhere else. I think those are the things that will stay with us here on out.
It's interesting. You mentioned that client with the glass of wine, that there's a level of acceptance to this Zoom stuff that, if they don't have to go down to the office, they don't want to. Eric, I'm hearing a lot from people about doing sort of a concept where you have maybe one nice meeting room for clients, and then the advisors, they come in and out of the offices, they need to meet with people, and they just do they just need a sales desk for them to sit at, and that way they're saving an awful lot on real estate costs. Are you seeing advisors sort of looking to the future when you talk to them and trying to figure out, what's going to be next for their practice?
We're having a lot of those conversations. And I think as Kurt pointed out, there's a number of things, for a global firm, we would have talked about global reach in the past. Now we're going to talk about global adaptability. How do you make sure you have dispersed redundancies across the world? So if this happens again, we can more flexibly move. We talk about engagement, but now I think we're also thinking about workforce resilience. And that's a little bit of what you're talking about, right? You make sure potentially you add more flexibility, hot bunking in and out of offices when you're in person with clients and when you're not, such that you're creating some flexibility and some redundancy there. I think you're going to see geographic flexibility. You mentioned it, a lot of associates asking for it, probably some resistance from leadership in the past. I think there's going to be a lot more flexibility, and I think it's going to be seen as a perk, as an organizational benefit to being those that are most equipped and best equipped, allowed you to kind of have flexibility to move about or be where you want to be while working. And then, yeah, I think there's two parts of your direct question. One is this idea of balance, and I think we'll come back into balance. We'll see a balance of the in-person and the remote. We'll see a lot more remote relative to the pre-COVID period. We'll see us start to narrow in on when each is most effective. But I also think there's a challenge in that. And it's the flip side to the happy accidents concept I brought forward, and that is a culture of meetings. And so, I think what starts to happen is when we can only engage remotely, what we start to use is a very fixed set of scheduling throughout the day, and we're scheduling all of our folks, scheduling all of our engagements. And at least our experience has been that can overswing. And you need to start pay attention to if you're using so much of the productive day simply to communicate with your associates or with your clients and not allowing them to actually do the work, it's a challenge. And I'm not sure that we as an industry have got that figured out yet. How do we maintain culture, maintain communication, but not eat up so much of the productive work day while we do it?
Those are great points. I don't want to miss the fact that we have a CPA here, and I want to talk and get Eric's point of view too on this. The markets and clients, and Capital Group's a good place to be doing this. But initially, Kurt, what are you telling people about the potential for changes in taxes, carry forward capital gains, income taxes, all these things that may or may not happen? There's a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of our clients fall into almost everybody in the capital gains, at least, they fall into those situations where they may be impacted by it. What are you seeing? And then, of course, you have the markets too, right? They've been volatile, to say the least. So how are you talking to people about this?
Yeah, great questions, Tony. I'll break those up into two categories: planning orientation and then investment orientation. On the planning front, without question, this has been an incredible year of all kinds of speculation coming into the election, and now still with some little uncertainty still left in what might happen with a few runoffs in the Senate. This is making a lot of clients nervous, especially clients that are generating substantial annual income and might be sitting on a fair amount of unrealized gains. And do you take the gains? Do you not? From a planning perspective, how might you think about your lifetime gift exemption? And therefore, if there's speculation, it might revert back to something much lower than what it's currently at, 11 plus million and 22 plus million, for a married couple. That starts now to factor into, all right, maybe we need to hedge a little bit. Maybe we need to make some progress on some gifting here. Maybe we do need to take some gains here if something might increase the tax rates going out in the future. You definitely even seen it in our own industry. You saw a surge this year of interest of independent firms wanting to find a solution, whether it was a strategic or financial partner. And much of it, not all of it, was driven by, if I'm going to do something, I might as well do it this year, relative to risk, having to pay something nearly double the taxes if I wait. So we've been very proactive with our clients to educate them first and foremost on what are these risks. There's unfortunately no specific certainty that things will or will not happen. And with many of our clients, they're finding comfort in hedging their bets. All right, let's take a little bit of gains here. Let's maybe move some additional monies out of the taxable estate just in case these things were to happen. But most importantly, they're comforted by the fact that we've been proactively bringing it up to them. And so they feel informed, even if ultimately they don't want to make any meaningful move, whether we recommended that was in their best interest or not, they're feeling good about that. On the investment front, the biggest challenge in this year and the recent years, as we continue with this secular trend of historic low interest rates, this year capping that trend off of exceptionally low interest rates, and other parts of the world looking at negative interest rates. People are looking for yield of where could I get, a decent return, an acceptable return without taking undue risk. And I think what we're seeing in behavior is that because there is such limited yield, people are accepting more risk in their portfolio. This is not what we're advocating for our clients. We're just seeing it, of looking to stretch. Maybe this is what's fueling a much stronger market than potentially what the underlying pinnings are of the economy, of people willing to take more risk for the potential of that return. And we think that that is likely to be around here now for the near term, where there does not seem to be an immediate light at the end of the tunnel that, short intermediate interest rates are going to get to a level where people would say, all right, 2, 3, 4, 5%, I can now start earning a decent return. So it's making sure your clients don't do the things that are typical of behavioral finance, of panic and ultimately make a series of poor decisions. In our opinion, our client's job is to create the wealth. Our job is to preserve and compound it. And sometimes you have to patiently wait, for opportunities to present themselves, not force them and make a series of poor decisions.
Is that true? I mean, Eric, this is right down the fairway for Capital Group. I mean, this is this is what you guys do. A little bit, this last market, I think we've established that good firms are doing well here. Kurt's firm is doing well. He's getting more clients. We're entering this emperor has no clothes kind of situation where everybody's a genius in a bull market. So for 10 years, everyone's been really smart. And now all of a sudden things are off a little bit. So sort of the people who weren't as concerned as Kurt is about his clients, maybe not doing so well. What are you seeing and what are you guys advising?
Well, the first, it's kind of a relative personal detail. My 19-year-old son is home with the gap semester from college because he's unable to return. And we're seeing the news here, but he started trading options on Robinhood. So to your point, in a bull market like this, we see some really good early indicators that maybe there are market entrants or decisions being made that aren't in the best long-term interest of those making those decisions. And I think Kurt pulled it forward. Great managers, great advisors know what they do well, and they're very thoughtful before they deviate from it. They hold their principles very closely, and then they subject their practices to continuous question and continuous improvement. But I think what we might be seeing, and if there's mistakes being made here, it's this tension between principles and practice. We may be tempted to commit investment sins of omission, allowing portfolios to drift away from strategic allocations to growth because of the disparity between historically growth and value companies in the marketplace, drift more to domestic companies because there's an equally wide disparity over the last bunch of years between domestic markets and international markets. And as Kurt laid out, the reach for risk in fixed income. Usually, if these are thoughtful strategic decisions, then all is well. If they're a sign of allowing short-term results to drive a change to a long-term approach, that seldom ends well. And we're seeing extremities in diversions between asset classes, between styles, between geographies that are really at the extreme end of historic norms. That's a focus on the mistakes, but I think there's a missed opportunity here if we don't also recognize that there are very real reasons to think about individual companies inside those out of favor asset classes. I'll use international as a place to go a little bit deeper. Even while international markets, as measured by indexes over the last bunch of years with a momentary pause in 2017, right, have materially lagged. What's interesting to reflect on is over the same period of the top 50 companies globally, 75% of them have been outside the US. And so taking shortcuts and kind of observing potentially, what are general indicators may be masking the granular reality underneath it. And so for a manager like Capital, where we're doing individual company research, we're thinking about this, we have a global footprint, this is actually a wonderful time for clients, for us to be thinking about taking positions in those companies. And as Kurt said, positioning ourselves to emerge in great shape on the other side.
I'm also getting, we talk a lot about changes, and I'm kind of what I'm feeling and what I'm getting from this conversation is that there are some things that are immutable. We talked about, good advice, bad advice. Advice seems to be the thing that's going to stick with us. You know what I mean? That's a difference between us and a computer. Although I would like to sort of follow your son, and whenever he's on options buying, then maybe we use it as a counter indicator. Practical matter, advice is key. And that's sort of what gives me a lot of hope going forward about our business, having the ability to give advice in a hard time. Just, I can't get the image out of my mind, Kurt, maybe because I want a glass of wine, but the client with a glass of wine, who's sitting there, we have that sort of connectivity. You can't get that from a computer, and that seems to be the future. Would you agree, Kurt, that that's where we are?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that'd be a fair summary of it.
Yeah. I want to talk, so we're talking about advice and how that works, before we go here, about the RIA insider and the RIA, board, and how does that work, Eric? And then maybe find out, Kurt, what you're doing with it, how advisors can get it, get involved. I hope that, people can see through just having this conversation that when you talk things out, you can pull a lot of pieces. If I'm running my own RIA, I can get a lot of good info from seeing how others are doing things.
Yeah, I guess, Tony, the insight here for us is that you said it early on, right? The blessing of being independent is you get to make all your own decisions. The curse of being independent is having to make all of your own decisions, right? And also take responsibility for everything that happens in the enterprise and how you progress it through time. And so the insight for us was that, if I, in danger of oversimplifying it, running a big dynamic business is complex, but you can probably bring it down to a few big functions. One is running a vibrant and efficient business. The other is attracting and delighting the right clients through time. And the last is building an effective investment function that delivers clients to their objectives on time with the right degree of risk and with superior results. So we just took that as our guidance. Our focus is on providing insights and actionable implementation, not just information, but a way to pull these services into your practice to help you do what you need to do so you can focus on what's most important, which you just identified, which is diving in with your clients, connecting with them as individuals, as people, identifying what's most important, and helping them navigate that. So I'd say there's kind of three pieces here. The first is starting with a very strong team. And over the last few years, our national team, now 70% of them are chartered financial analysts. All of them are at least CIMA. Most of them have their MBA or CFP. They have to be able to engage at an enterprise level, at a very deep level from an investment standpoint, with our most sophisticated clients. And we knew that was a prerequisite. The second was, some part of brilliance is the humility of knowing what you don't know. And there are limits to what capital knows about RIAs and how we continue to stay real time ahead of what those needs are as they evolve. And so we established the advisory board, and Kurt mentioned good timing. Both RIA Insider and the advisory board started in March of this year, not by any foreknowledge, but simply by good fortune. We assembled 9 of what we consider our industry leading edge thinkers. They are principals, they're founders, they're CIOs, they're chief operating officers, they're third parties in the industry, and they meet on a bi-monthly basis. We'll meet twice more before the end of the year, talking about very important things. And the important bit for us is getting that real-time insight into what's really important to clients. And so, our conversations over the last bunch of months have been around that immediate shift to operating effectively through COVID and what would be the long-term implication. How do we continue to engage our clients, create cultural and continuity, and bring diversity into our businesses through time? Thinking about changes to the investment universe and what will be necessary there. And those elements are really what's become the foundation of what we bring to RIA Insider. So in short, if you think about those large categories, running a vibrant business, one of the things we consistently hear from RIAs is this need for help with strategic planning, for benchmarking with peer firms, for valuation. Within RIA Insider, we give you access to Truelytics, which is a third-party service that allows you to enter detail on your business, get an immediate look at what similar businesses look like and are doing, and if you want to look into strategic ways to increase your value or even get a valuation. From a client perspective, we consistently hear number one effort that RIAs want to execute against, but feel like perhaps they're remiss in doing so, is communicating with existing clients and staying in front of potential prospects. We introduced the Marketing Lab. It's our content your brand. So what they're doing, all of our content, upload your headshot, upload your logo, some information, assign, or I should say, assemble those articles, add your commentary, pull it down, digital form, PDF, works with RIAs to help them best deploy that. And then lastly, from investment perspective, obviously, again, independent firms want to maintain their unique and client-aligned approach, their philosophy of investing, how they've committed to clients, what that means to risk and how they deliver, but they're trying to deliver that investment proposition more effectively and more efficiently. So to that end, along the portfolios lens, our portfolio analytics team partners with firms in an ongoing way. So they work with them on a quarterly basis, take in the models, understand the investment philosophy of the RIA, understand the penchant for risk or not, and then work with them directly to help provide the insight and data from our portfolio oversight group to improve their investment process and outcomes. So at the very least, you're maintaining that unique and differentiated investment process using our insight and our sweat equity to help you do that in an efficient way. And I think at the end of the day, since our launch in March, got about 3,500 firms engaged in RIA Insider. It's available if you go to riainsider.com. We're really proud of what we've done there. I think with the advisory board's help, with our consistent support and investment, it's just going to get better from here. So our vision is something that is a 2.0, a 3.0 that becomes part of your day-to-day use in a really valuable way.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I mean, Kurt, this is almost like, I find, in my position too, I've talked to RIAs all the time, and I'm lucky enough to be talking to the CEOs of the people that have done it. And when you get those folks in a room together, a lot of good things happen. So I'm assuming that's like you on this advisory board. Tell us a little bit about your interactions there and how that works, because I know, well, now I see the sun's coming on me in my prison cell here, but I know that can be, really fruitful for you and for all the people that are in the room.
Oh, without question, Tony. I feel like I'm a kid in a candy store every one of our board meetings, and I was incredibly grateful to have been invited by Eric and his colleagues to be a part of that. I've recognized literally my entire 25 plus year career, the Capital Group as a world-class asset manager, arguably some of the best research that is conducted in the industry for how to make good investment decisions. But the amount of investment and effort that they put forth to help independent wealth management firms, not just simply construct good client portfolios, but to build great firms has been incredibly impressive. For years, custodians such as your Schwab and Fidelity have done a good job trying to educate and support the independent community. I have not seen any effort like Capital's until Capital came forth of a world-class asset manager bringing all of its insights, all of its research to do that. We've had board meetings this year where they bring foremost experts on everything from behavioral finance to not only how do wealth management professionals behave typically, but how do clients behave. They bring their macro, micro research to say, where are their trends? Educating on novel thinking about investment portfolios. For example, our last meeting, an incredible presentation by one of Eric's colleagues talking about thinking about investments in categories of those disrupting versus those disrupted. We all like to talk domestic, international, growth versus value versus core, and we slice up the asset allocation universe 6 ways to Sunday. But oftentimes, if you just take a step back, some things could be looked at even more simply. And it actually opens your mind to thinking about where are fair valuations. Historically, the S&P 500 is traded around 16 and change of earnings. It's now trading over 20. Is 20, even still not fair value, because those disrupting potentially don't have a linear path to success. They might have an exponential path to success. So it's all these things that have come together, and to be able to share that with my peers that are also on the board, it's very insightful. I don't think I've left one meeting this year without giving great thought to what we're doing as a business, what we're doing for clients, and things we should consider changing.
Well, I think that's great. I'm impressed with it. Again, it was the kind of thing that I wished that I had when I was starting these RIAs on my own during that perfect storm, But look, I appreciate everyone being here. I want to make sure that there's nothing that I missed. Is there anything that you all wanted to talk about? I feel like we covered a lot of good ground and understand what you guys at Capital Group are doing. And I appreciate your you're doing this for our community, because I think it's great for RIAs all around. So thank you both for being here. Really appreciate it.
Tony, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.